All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 10 of Hank versus the Robot. I've got with me in studio Sterile Simon today, and we're going to be talking about the sterile processing simulation that we built and released at the last week of December. And I know there's a lot of y'all that have already been out there playing with it, got some great feedback so far. We're going to talk through the structure of that simulation, why it's important, I think, for you and your team to practice on, to play around with, but then even more importantly, how you can use tools like this to bring the power of AI home to your department. Okay. That's the outline of the show. Let's bring in our guest now, Sterile Simon. Welcome back to the studio today.
Thanks, Hank. It's always a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to dive into this topic. The sterile processing simulation you've created is such a groundbreaking tool for the industry. I think we're really onto something big here, combining technology and training in a way that feels both innovative and practical. Let's get into it and explore how this simulation is structured and why it's such a game changer for sterile processing teams everywhere.
All right, Simon. So before we go into the specific simulation that we've built, can you just take a step back and kind of level set the audience for what is the power and purpose of simulation technologies in general? Maybe like talk through some other industries that use simulation like this and the impact and the reasons that they do so, and then tie that back to the huge potential now that we see for sterile processing.
Absolutely, Hank. Simulation technologies have long been a cornerstone in industries where precision, decision-making, and high-stakes outcomes are critical. Take aviation, for example. Pilots train on flight simulators to experience everything from routine takeoffs to extreme emergencies, all without the risk of real-world consequences. In healthcare, surgeons and clinicians use simulation labs to practice procedures or respond to medical crises in controlled, repeatable scenarios. Even the military relies on simulations to strategize and rehearse missions. The common thread in all these examples is the ability to recreate realistic environments and challenges, allowing professionals to build skills, test decisions, and even fail without real-world repercussions. It's all about preparation, confidence, and continuous improvement. Now, bringing this back to sterile processing, the stakes are just as high. A misstep in reprocessing can lead to infections, patient harm, or costly delays in surgery. With a simulation like yours, we can replicate the complexities of SPD workflows, staffing challenges, equipment failures, prioritization dilemmas, and let techs and leaders practice their responses in a safe, controlled space. It's not just training, it's transformative. It prepares teams for the unpredictable, sharpens their critical thinking, and even highlights gaps in policies or processes. The potential here is massive, especially as SPDs embrace technology to address their daily challenges.
All right, Simon. So the majority of our audience, including me, don't really know that much about the back end of AI. I'm excited about it. I see the potential. I'm using it every day. I'm trying to get immersed in the technology and the implications and applications of AI, but I'm not a computer scientist. I'm not a developer. I don't know how all of these things work in the background. Can you give us maybe a really introduction, like a pre-K level explanation on how the AI is working in the background of these simulations to make this work in a user-friendly manner that provides this value that we're shooting for, that you reference all these other industries, the reasons that they use AI simulation as well?
Hank, let's break it down into simple terms. At its core, AI, like the one running your sterile processing simulation, is like a really smart assistant with a giant filing cabinet full of knowledge and a great imagination. Here's how it works. When you set up the simulation, you tell the AI, here's the world we're playing in. Sterile processing. These are the rules, challenges, and things you should know about, like policies, procedures, and common problems. That's like giving it a playbook. Now, when someone interacts with the simulation, let's say they ask, what do I do if a sterilizer cycle fails? The AI looks into its filing cabinet, pulls out all the relevant information, and then pieces together a thoughtful response. It doesn't just pick from pre-written answers. It builds a custom reply based on the situation, like writing a new chapter of a book every time. What makes it feel user-friendly is the AI's ability to listen to what you're asking, understand the context, and then give you a response that feels tailored and natural. It's like having a conversation with someone who knows SPD inside and out, but they can also think on their feet. The magic comes from the fact that it can adapt and adjust based on what you're asking or how complex the scenario is. So you don't need to be a developer to use it. You just need to tell the AI what kind of world to build and let it do the heavy lifting. It's designed to bridge that gap between high-tech systems and everyday users like you and your team. That's why it's such a powerful tool. It's intuitive, adaptable, and always learning.
Yeah, I love that, Simon. And I do love the user-friendly part of AI. In the spring, I gave a couple of talks at some of the large conferences in our industry. And in the Q&A on both of those talks, folks were asking, well, what do I do about this, or how do I do this? And my response was always, hey, ask that question directly to the AI, right? No one knows more about the technology and how this functions than the AI itself. So ask the AI the questions that you want clarity on or you want recommendations on first. Not to say that you can't ask other people or you can't go outside of AI, but instead of going to Google first or going to your boss first, now you can go to AI first. And to your point, if there's enough context, if there's enough files in that imaginary filing cabinet for them to reference, the answers that you're getting many times are going to be better answers than you would just stumble upon out on the internet all by yourself, and potentially even better than some of the answers that you would get from your human network just because of the amount of knowledge that AI has access to. Okay, Simon, let's transition now to the sterile processing simulator itself. Give us a couple of examples of the kinds of scenarios that could be simulated in SPD, and then I want to talk about how to bring that to the next level and make it customized to your own department experience.
You're absolutely right, Hank. Let's dive into some examples of scenarios that could be simulated. One classic scenario could be handling a sterilizer failure mid-shift. The simulation might present you with a situation like the steam sterilizer in Bay 2 fails to complete a cycle due to a temperature issue. You have 3 critical sets waiting to go into surgery. What do? It could guide you through options like rerouting the sets to another sterilizer, notifying the OR team, or troubleshooting the equipment issue, all while factoring in time pressures and resource constraints. Another example might focus on prioritization during a staffing shortage. The AI could say, you're down 2 technicians for the evening shift, and you have loaner trays arriving late. How do you prioritize the workload? The user would get to decide how to allocate their limited resources, and the simulation would generate outcomes based on their choices, like delays, stress points, or successful adjustments. Now, to take this to the next level, you could customize the simulation by feeding it your department's actual data and policies. For example, if your department has a specific policy on how to handle wet loads or missing instruments in trays, you could upload those guidelines. The simulator would then structure its scenarios and responses around your unique protocols. It's like turning the AI into an extension of your department's brain, offering hyper-relevant training that mimics real-world challenges specific to your team. This level of customization not only sharpens training, but also builds trust and consistency. Techs and leaders can practice scenarios that mirror their daily challenges, making the lessons stick and preparing them for whatever the real world throws their way.
Simon, I mean, yeah, my mind's going a million different places here, so maybe let's just hash them out one at a time. So going backward, typically I would start and say, okay, yeah, let's talk about how you could use this simulation to train new employees, and we'll get there. But first, I want to start on our existing employees and applying our policies to these specific simulated scenarios, right? Because you're talking a little bit more about what's the practical or what's the technical step that we need to take in this situation. But there's also that policy compliance piece that is so frustrating many times for sterile processing leaders and even preceptors who are hiring in technicians who may have worked at a number of different facilities with all kinds of different policies through the years, kind of a hodgepodge of we do this here, we do it this way here. And then many times we're working with interim travelers who are coming in for a 13-week contract, and they too have been a million different places. They've operated under a million different policies around X, Y, and Z, and now they got to learn our policy. And we're not exactly sure if everybody on our team understands the implications of our policies to the day-to-day workflow that they might encounter. So talk us through how bringing that policy piece in can help us to verify and re-verify and retrain around, are they doing the sterilization recall according to our policy, or are they doing it a different way, which may still be technically allowed in the standards, but it's just not allowed in our facility because it's not according to our policy.
Hank, you've zeroed in on a huge pain point in sterile processing. Policy compliance. It's not just about knowing how to handle a situation, but also understanding why and doing it your facility's way. The simulator can be a powerful tool to tackle this challenge head on, especially with the dynamic mix of staff we're dealing with, like travelers and seasoned techs with varied backgrounds. When you upload your department's specific policies into the simulation, you're creating a virtual training ground tailored to your exact operational framework. For instance, if your facility's policy outlines a specific sequence for managing a sterilization recall, like documenting in a certain order or notifying specific personnel, the simulator can generate scenarios that test those exact steps. It might ask, a sterilization failure is flagged in the morning load. What's your next step according to our policy? If someone veers off course, the AI can guide them back, explaining the proper sequence and why it matters. This isn't just about catching errors. It's about building consistency. The simulator can help you identify gaps where team members may still be falling back on methods from previous jobs, even if those methods technically align with industry standards. By continuously testing and reinforcing your facility's unique policies, you're making sure everyone operates from the same playbook. For leaders and preceptors, this is a game changer. Instead of relying on one-on-one shadowing where things might get missed or hoping staff read and retain policies on their own, you now have a system to actively engage them in practicing real-world scenarios. And for travelers, it's an immediate onboarding tool. Drop them into a few policy-specific simulations on day one, and you'll know right away where they're aligned and where they need more support. Ultimately, this approach eliminates guesswork, reduces variation, and creates confidence. Everyone, no matter how long they've been there or where they've worked before, knows exactly what's expected, how to comply, and the real-world impact of doing it your way. It's not just training, it's culture building around compliance.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. So many implications. That's massive. And it's scalable. To your point, you don't need the department supervisor or their trainer or their preceptor to be sitting at their elbow as they're going through the simulation. They can go through it all. They can learn. They can get immediate feedback from the AI to say, hey, you chose this. This is actually not our policy. This is the why behind our policy. I mean, massive. Okay, so let's talk about the onboarding for a new employee piece. This is another one of those really challenging, frustrating, irritating things depending on which role you're playing in the onboarding process. And it's irritating at the new technician level too. You know, these folks want to come in, they want to know, they want to be trained well, they don't want to have gaps, but there's only so many resources to go around. Preceptors only know so much individually. Speak to how this kind of simulation technology can help us in that onboarding process in particular.
Absolutely, Hank. Onboarding is one of those make or break processes, not just for the new tech, but for the entire department. A poorly onboarded tech can struggle for months or even years trying to fill in gaps they didn't know existed. That's where simulation technology steps in as a game changer. When you use the simulator for onboarding, you're creating an interactive, scalable training tool that delivers consistent, comprehensive education. Let's say a new tech is learning how to inspect and reassemble instruments. Instead of relying solely on a preceptor to explain every detail, who might inadvertently skip steps or forget nuances, the simulation can walk them through step-by-step scenarios like inspecting for biofilm or identifying damaged components. They get immediate feedback. You missed this inspection point, and here's why it's critical to patient safety. Now, layering in your facility's policies takes this even further. New hires aren't just learning how to perform tasks, they're learning your way of doing them. For example, the simulator might say, you're preparing a tray for sterilization. According to our policy, what's the proper documentation for this set? If they answer incorrectly, the AI immediately corrects them and provides an explanation. That kind of real-time feedback builds confidence and clarity without needing constant oversight. The scalability here is huge. Instead of relying on preceptors, who, let's be honest, are already juggling 1,000 things, new hires can independently complete simulation exercises at their own pace. And for leaders, you can track progress, pinpoint areas where a new hire might need extra coaching, and even standardize onboarding timelines. No more hit or miss training. This also benefits the new techs themselves. They feel empowered to learn actively rather than passively shadowing someone. They're not just being told what to do, they're experiencing it, practicing it, and getting constructive feedback every step of the way. That leads to faster competency, greater confidence, and ultimately better retention of both the employee and the knowledge. It's about making onboarding smoother, more efficient, and more engaging for everyone involved. And when you do that, you're setting the foundation for a strong, high-performing team from day one.
All right, Simon, we've talked about competencies. We've talked about policies and procedures. What other piece of department information could we feed into the sterile processing simulation that would customize that simulation experience and provide greater value at the department level?
Hank, great question. Beyond competencies and policies, there's a wealth of department-specific information you could feed into the simulation to take it to the next level. Let me give you a few ideas. One, instrument tracking data. If your department uses a tracking system, you could upload typical workflows, instrument set data, or even common errors flagged in the system. The simulation could then recreate scenarios like incomplete sets or delays caused by missing instruments, helping techs practice problem solving in alignment with your real-world data. 2, equipment maintenance schedules. By integrating your specific maintenance logs or schedules, the simulator could introduce challenges like handling unexpected equipment downtime or managing workflows during preventative maintenance. This helps techs and leaders practice juggling priorities while keeping compliance top of mind. 3, loaner tray processes. You could input your facility's unique loaner tray management protocols. The simulation might create scenarios where trays arrive late or are missing documentation, prompting users to practice correct intake procedures and communication with vendors or the OR team. 4, audit and QA findings. If you have data from past audits or recurring quality assurance issues, such as incorrect labeling, bioburden on instruments, or improper sterilizer loading, you could use that data to generate scenarios. This allows your team to learn from previous mistakes and actively prevent them in the future. 5, surgical case mix data. Inputting your department's most common procedures or high-priority instrument sets could help customize the simulation to reflect your workload. For example, a tech might need to prioritize instrument turnover for back-to-back total joint cases, practicing efficiency while maintaining quality. 6, communication protocols. Many SPDs have specific workflows for escalating issues to supervisors or staff or biomedical teams. Feeding these protocols into the simulation could help users practice communication in high-pressure scenarios, like notifying the OR about a critical delay or addressing equipment malfunctions. 7, emergency scenarios. Every SPD has unique emergency plans, whether it's a power outage, water supply issue, or recall. The simulation could replicate these events, letting techs practice the proper response while reinforcing department-specific contingency plans. By incorporating these additional data points, you're turning the simulator into a digital twin of your department. It doesn't just train people on generic skills. It prepares them to thrive in your environment, handling your challenges with precision and confidence. The value this adds is exponential, as it not only improves performance, strengthens teamwork and alignment across the board.
Simon, we're going to have you back for the next episode to talk about predictive staffing, because just as you was talking, I was kind of sitting here thinking like, yeah, what are those other implications where this level of the digital twin would be the most helpful? And I know like we're solving a lot of training problems, we're solving a lot of morale problems, competency problems, just like you talked about. But then there's the body piece. We still need the bodies. And that predictive staffing framework, I think, would be a really interesting conversation to have you back in. But we're going to wrap the episode there. I want to thank you, Simon, for another terrific insight. And I'm pumped about this. I mean, huge potential here. So thanks so much for sharing your insight today.
Thanks, Hank. It's always a pleasure to be here and dive into these game-changing ideas. I'm already looking forward to our next chat on predictive staffing. There's so much potential to explore how these tools can tackle the human side of SPD challenges. Thanks for having me, and I'm just as pumped as you are about where this can go.
All right, that was Sterile Simon. My name is Hank Balch. You're listening to Hank versus the Robot. And if you made it this far in the episode, sterile processing professional out there, y'all, 2025 could be your year. Let me just paint this picture here, right? So you've got hospital administrators that you want them to pay more attention to you. It benefits you in almost every way for them to pay a lot of attention to you. Now, if you got a lot of problems and they're paying bad attention to you, then maybe not so much. But if you got a lot of problems and they're paying good attention to you, like they're saying, hey, we need to give you more support. We need to give you more staff. We need to make some investments. That's all good. But you want to get on their radar in a way that you're telling the story something big is happening down in my SPD, something massive, something important, something not only department changing, but impacting our facility, our entire health system, the industry at large. You want to be on the tip of the spear, pioneering out there in sterile processing land. Well, I can't think of a better, more exciting, more helpful angle to take in 2025 than to decide today, after listening to this episode, that your department is going to be all about AI in 2025. Tell your C-suite that. Hey, Mr. CFO. Hey, Mrs. CNO. Hey, y'all across the C-suite. Just want to let you know, we're doing a lot of work with AI down in SPD. We're using AI for predictive staffing. We'll talk about that in the next episode here. We're using AI to integrate our policies and procedures into our training to drive greater compliance. We're using AI to take a look at our gaps in incident reporting, like we talked about in a previous episode with the black hole of sterile processing data. I promise you guys, if you start utilizing this, seeing the potential, and not only the potential, but the actual impact to the speed at which you can improve your processes, update your policies, drive competency and policy compliance, you name it, and at the same time, if you're proactively communicating and telling that story to the rest of your facility, not just your C-suite, but definitely including your C-suite, but maybe you start publishing a weekly update or monthly update on Sterile Processing's AI Project 2025. Ask AI to give you a better title than that, right? But if you do these things and you leverage these things and you commit to this in 2025, you will set a tone in your facility, in your health system, in your territory, in this industry, to be one of the leading lights as far ahead of the curve as you can get in AI. It will be massive. You will win. Your problems will not go away, but you will have so much better grasp on the problems you can solve today and the resources that you need to solve the problems tomorrow, just because now you've got this tool in your pocket to simulate and drive department level decision making, impacts, policies, updates, competencies, you name it. Okay, that's my call out to you today. Now, if you don't want to do that, if you got too busy or you still don't know how, that's fine. I still want you to listen to these episodes and get inspiration in other ways. It's not just about, hey, implementing AI in my SPD. That's not the mission for this podcast. It's to glean knowledge and insight from these kinds of conversations. Now, if you want to do it, I'd be super excited, and we'd help you any way that we can, including with the simulation, obviously, that we built, but any other AI resources that we can turn you on to. I'd love to help you. Either way, I really appreciate you tuning in to these kind of conversations. I would love to get your feedback on the flow, on the topics, anything else like resources maybe around these different episodes. If you loved an episode but you want to know more about the topic or conversation, let me know. Maybe we can do a part 2 episode on the same topic. But like I've said elsewhere, without you, without the listeners, I'm just here talking to myself, right? And I got better things to do than talk to myself. You got better things to do than just listen to nothing that's worth your time. So I want to meet in the middle and make sure that what we're bringing to you is stuff that you can use today and tomorrow to improve your own career and to improve your department so that we're keeping our patients safer. That's the vision, and I know you're about that too. So I want to thank you again for tuning in, and tune in for the next episode as we tackle that predictive staffing. I think that's going to be another really interesting conversation. I'm hoping to learn a thing or two myself. And until then, keep fighting dirty.